Hello, everyone. We still have some people logging in, so we'll give them a minute or two to get settled, and then we'll get started. All right, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Link Center for this shared learning group focused on the topic of sparking systems change and the importance of partnerships. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items while we get started. Session is being recorded, and the recording and the transcript will be made available on our website. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with others. Attendees cannot see the names of other attendees, and all attendees are muted. Please use the chat function in Zoom to communicate with other attendees and with the host during the webinar. You can use the chat by clicking on chat at the bottom of your screen. And be aware that your name will appear in the chat if you make a comment. And if you'd like, you can change your display name by clicking those three dots next to your name and selecting rename. We will have representatives from the Link Center watching the chat and responding throughout the session today. If you'd like to submit a question or a comment privately to the host and panelists, you can do that by clicking on the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We do have live captioning and ASL interpreters present today. We will be spotlighting the active speaker and the ASL interpreter throughout the webinar. If you click on View on your Zoom screen, you can change the way you see the panelists. And if you're having any trouble with your view, please let us know in the Q&A and we'll try to help. At this time, I'm going to hand the floor over to Dr. Stacy Nonamaker, who will get us started today. Stacy, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today to talk about sparking systems change and the importance of partnership. We are the Link Center. We're funded by the Administration for Community Living. I'm not going to go too in-depth on what we do at the Link Center. Hopefully, most of you have already heard of us, have been a part of some of the work that we've been doing, or have at the very least visited us on our website. The QR code in front of you, the link in the chat, and the link on the screen also will take you to our website. And we like to say, check us out, check back often, because we're constantly curating resources and information and really looking to support our mission of improving mental health access for people with disabilities. So I'm joined by a few of our partners today, so you'll be introduced to them. I am with the National Association of State DD Directors, who is one of the primary partners of the Link Center. And so that's a little bit about me, and I'd love to know who is all joining us today. So if you want to just take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat, say hello, who you are, where you're from. It's always nice to know who's joining us as we're hanging out for the next hour and a half. Okay, so what are the shared learning groups? I'm not sure how many repeat attendees we have, but just for some basic overview, shared learning groups are quarterly meetings. We host 4 meetings per quarter, or gatherings, if you will. One is for direct support professionals, and we just did that one earlier today. This one is directed at clinical professionals. We have one tomorrow for people with lived experience and one for families of people with lived experience. And really the topic and the information in the 4 presentation materials is the same, but we may be tweaking the content and the talking points a little bit for each of the different audiences. This is really a shared learning group. We emphasize the shared, so we try to make it relevant to the audience because we really want to engage and hear from you all. So the presentation and the content is really a collaboration among the Link Center partners. And that includes people with lived experience, researchers, people who work on policy issues. Again, you'll hear from quite a few of our partners today as we go through our time together. And it bears repeating. Stephanie already said this, but we will record and transcribe today's meeting. So we'll be capturing all the words and the things that we say. And all of the materials, including the transcript, will be available after the meeting. And anything that we share during the meeting, post-meeting, we do encourage you to share far and wide with people in your networks. So what are our goals and outcomes of these shared learning groups? Well, we like to take a topic, a relevant topic, as I said, and really share with you what we're thinking about that topic and things, resources that we found. And in particular today, we're going to share the impact of storytelling and partnering and some resources around that, all under the importance of sparking systems change. We're also the shared part of the shared learning group. We're also going to spend some time together taking what you've heard and really hearing from you all about your experiences as people in the community who you join because you're probably thinking about this too. So we have some time at the end of our time together for that. So part of the Link Center, and it's really a huge part, is our steering committee, which is made up of individuals with lived experience who really drive and guide the work that we do. And they have helped us, really set the format for these shared learning groups. And one of the things that we like to do is set the stage or agreements, if you will, with one another for this experience that we're really sharing. The first one is take care of yourself and do what is necessary for your comfort and care during our time together. We should be gentle with ourselves and each other because sometimes this work is hard to do. We celebrate that we are all individuals with different backgrounds, and we celebrate that we have shared experiences to learn from during our time together today. We know that we are each unique with our own experiences in the world. And we listen and share with open minds and kindness, and we do not judge or blame others for what they share. So as I've said, today we're really focusing on sparking systems change and how do we do that with others. We believe the Link Center is a really good example of this. If you see on your screen, these are all of the partners of the Link Center that really dig in and roll up our collective sleeves to figure out how do we improve mental health access for people with disabilities. I wanted to share some things that we've done as examples of systems change. The first one is we know that there are 98 suicide lifeline crisis call centers around the nation. And in really thinking about how can we make them more inclusive for people with disabilities, we have had the opportunity to engage with 988 administrators, people who oversee the administration of these call centers across the states. And we have had conversations with them about how it would be helpful for intake when the counselors are talking to somebody to strike a balance between maintaining anonymity and also understanding who this person is that you're calling so that you can better meet their needs. And so through sharing stories, the steering committee has shared stories with these 988 administrators and other experiences. There are a few 988s in the western part of the nation that are piloting some what they're calling lived experience questions, where counselors are asking people when they call, what do I need to know about you to better support you? then it's left up to the caller, right? So we feel like this is such a very good example of moving the needle forward in an existing system, right? And how we've been able to impact that. Another example is we've heard loud and clear from people with lived experience who may sometimes end up in acute settings like hospitals, psychiatric units, that transitions from those settings back to the community can be cumbersome. And so we pulled together a focus group of ER docs, nurses, psychiatric pharmacists to really hear on the other side what are some of the things from their experience that make these transitions complicated. And what can we do about that? So we're in the midst of that work as we speak. And finally, another example is we notice gaps in resources specifically aimed towards people with lived experience around things like trauma and crisis. And so we've worked with our partners to develop resources to fill those gaps. And we'll drop some of those resources in the chat now, but also encouraging you to go to our webpage and check out all the resources that we have available. So those are just some examples, and I think that the Link Center Steering Committee is one of our best examples of influencing systems, especially because it's from the perspective of people with lived experience. So these, again, are people who inform all that we do at the Link Center. For example, help us pick topics for these shared learning groups, help us develop content for shared learning groups, including today's topic. And we talked to the steering committee about their thoughts around sparking systems change, their experiences, and some of the things that they shared as they've had to navigate systems are the need to educate systems, the need to make systems less complicated, especially service systems, the need to understand how they can better advocate within the different systems that they're a part of, and the need to ensure that all people in systems feel heard. So these are people who are actively engaged with the Link Center work and have talked about feeling stronger in the mission of creating better access to mental health services because they're doing it together. And some folks have specifically reported that being part of this group has also strengthened their sense of self and what they need. So the last example that I will leave you with before I turn it over to my colleagues is from a steering committee member. Her name is Alicia, and she talks a lot with us about using art to communicate. And what you see on the slide before you is an example that she shared with us in her state to encourage lawmakers to see the importance of the direct support professional role as they make decisions about wages for direct support professionals. So I just wanted to give you some examples just to set the stage, in terms of sparking systems change and the things that we're doing at the Link Center. So now I get to turn it over to my colleagues from the Sonoran Center who are going to dig in a little bit more specifically about how we each have a part in changing systems with a focus on storytelling. So I'm going to turn it over to Agnes and Barb from the Sonoran Center.
So thank you very much, Stacy, for the introduction. So I am Agnes Adekai, Program Manager for Native Initiatives with the Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities, and my colleague, Barbara Brent, who's our Community Systems Change Liaison. I am Diné, which is Navajo. I grew up on the Navajo Reservation, and I am a woman who is about 50-ish years old with dark hair, graying, a tan skin, and dark blue reading glasses, and I'm wearing a teal covered shirt. So again, we are going to be discussing creating ripples, stories for change, and how stories can help in making change for the better for folks. And as I said, I'm part of the Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities. It is one of 68 University Centers for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. And we as a center facilitate the flow of disability-related information between community and university. And we work with people with disabilities, members of their families, state and local government agencies, and community providers in projects that provide training, technical assistance, service research, and information with a focus on building the capacity of communities to sustain their projects. Next slide, please. So on the screen here, we have a picture of a cloth container that's black and red with several cloth dolls that have headscarves on them. So these are called worry or storytelling dolls, and they are used in different Latino cultures, such as Mexico and Guatemala. The legend says that children tell their worries to the dolls before bed, then place them under their pillows, and the dolls take the worries away while they sleep, allowing for a peaceful night's rest. The dolls may also be used as a tool for storytelling by weaving ideas, situations, and people into a story. As Indigenous people, we also have a similar aspect of story dolls. Usually they're made out of clay among the Pueblo people. And then among several other people, they do have corn husk dolls and other dolls that are mated. So these dolls are usually utilized to pass down cultural narratives, myths, and teachings from one generation to another. So it's a way to share knowledge, culture, and traditions, the ways of knowing people. So storytelling has been an important role within human culture, and we all tell stories in relation to our values, traditions, experiences, and actions. Next slide, please. So today we are going to look at storytelling and systems change, and we will be having 3 objectives. 1, how storytelling can be an effective tool to nurture self-expression, foster self-knowledge, and drive self-determination. 2, we also are going to look at individual and community storytelling to support people with lived experiences to drive meaningful change. And 3, storytelling examples and ideas we'll share to exemplify how people's lived experiences help and assist and are part of the storytelling process. And as author and speaker Brene Brown states, stories are data with a soul. And an Indigenous scholar, Dr. Brian Brayboy, also mentions that in Indigenous communities, stories are data, and stories are also the basis for theory. So all the stories that we have to share are really can be used as tools to convey information and share knowledge. Next slide, please. So I will pass this on to my colleague, Barb, who will talk about what is a system. Barb?
And thank you, Agnes. That was a really helpful introduction. So, I'm sure all of you as clinicians have thought about what is a system. Is it your agency, the state, national agencies, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and others? And I thought I would give you the Oxford Dictionary definition because it's so friendly. It says, a set of things working together as parts of a mechanism or network or set of principles or procedures according to which something is done. So that perhaps is not where we want to go in explaining what a system is. And for the people that you support and that challenge our system to do better, our systems, no matter how we see them, can feel pretty unapproachable and overwhelming. Sometimes that's true for clinicians, but certainly for people with lived experience and their families. Case managers have a lot of complexity with that too. So that feeling of being unapproachable and overwhelming, and having to navigate both behavioral health systems and developmental disability system can be even more confusing and intimidating. Different words, different terminology, hopefully the same desired outcome, but it doesn't always fit together as easily as we hope. And so, can we go to the next slide, please? One thing that helps as clinicians and in working with people that we really need to do better in supporting is to think about systems as people. A system isn't a thing, a system's made up of people. And they have their own experiences, their hopes, their struggles, and accomplishments, both within their work environment and in their lives in general. So we've changed the definition just a little bit. And so our shared learning group is talking about a group of individuals, families, advocates, providers, government groups, and community members, because community is so important. They're striving to share resources, knowledge, and power to improve the quality of life for people with disabilities and their families. With that definition, we hope that it's emphasized that we're all equals and each person has a part to play that complements each other and can make a difference. Next slide, please. So, how are systems and storytelling related? I think we've all had moments, no matter whether we're people with lived experience, family members, clinicians, case managers, that we don't have power. If only we were a little higher in the organization, or only if somebody would listen to us, we could make the system better. We believe that every person has the power to create change. It could be individual growth. It could be how you support somebody else on their own journey, or assisting people with their own support needs. There are some techniques that have been used across the country that have been very valuable. That's offering peer support, offering to speak with agencies, almost like a fishbowl where people can ask you questions, but you have the opportunity to find out what's going to be asked first. Joining a committee, and joining doesn't mean that you're there getting information. Joining is making sure you get the commitment to be on the ground level as systems are changing. With storytelling, people can come together with different perspectives, create new ideas, build on everybody's strengths, not just the complexities and, gee, I wish you wouldn't do that, and find common ground. And through that, we are able to find positive systems change. And next slide, please. So, what's one of the powerful ways to foster change? In your own lives, each of you, we tell a story. And sometimes we're asked what we do, sometimes we're asked where we grew up, sometimes, depending on the nature of the relationship, we're asked about the things that aren't that perky in our lives. But storytelling is a powerful way to foster change. On a personal level, it can assist with self-understanding and finding new ways for our community partners to listen to people with lived experience as well as family members. We're good as clinicians, as professionals. We've got spreadsheet, we've got data, we've got all kinds of billing mechanisms, we know our HCPCS codes, but a story brings things to life. It builds connections and can be a strong springboard for systems change. Now, we're going to go into some examples about stories for good. So, storytelling and a man named Bill. Bill is really friendly and outgoing and is to this day. But when he was younger, he grew up in quite a rural community. Of course, we can't see who's participating, but unless you're from Texas, California, or maybe New Mexico, Alaska too, Arizona is the sixth biggest state in the nation, and you can drive for 12 hours without traffic and still be in Arizona. So in those very rural areas, resources can be very scarce. Bill is truly bilingual and grew up that way, but he was very hard to understand. one thing that was great is that the other children in these small communities, which can be helpful when people know each other, is that they weren't hurtful, they weren't rude, he wasn't bullied, but he began to withdraw because he wasn't understood. It was hurtful, it was hard. He didn't know what the future held. There were sparks of change there, and that can come from a family member, from Bill himself, or whatever sparks you to move forward in a positive way. Bill and his mom have always had really high expectations for him and also the mother for herself. Building on that work ethic and excitement, Bill began volunteering. He started actually before middle school, but middle school is when he got to do a lot of different things, whether he was super interested in or not. He's not a big sports guy. He likes film, but he did all kinds of things for the sports teams because it gave him exposure. It gave him a chance for people to know who Bill truly is. And he became much more comfortable sharing his story. His circle widened, and this led to people learning about his skills, which happened to be, well, he has many, video recording. He's good at math, and he's very good at listening. So what that led to was a group, and it was a self-advocacy group, asked him to volunteer to make videos of other people with lived experience who wanted to share their story. That sharing could have been used for before a clinical session to learn a little bit about someone. It could be a practice session before you go into therapy or meet new people. And over time, his value was further seen. It's a paid job now. He volunteers as a peer mentor, and he's strong about his stories, and he's strong about there's a better future ahead. By the way, he wants a second job. He doesn't think he's making enough money. And so through his circle, he has found an office where the office manager needs a little help with PowerPoints. I think we all could use that. And next slide, please. And I would like it to turn it back over to my colleague, Agnes. So thank you.
Thank you, Barb. So we're going to continue to talk about how storytelling really connects people. So you see here on the screen is a photo of a lake and a young person who places their hand on the lake and ripples start forming. So just like that image there, stories really are ripples throughout our life. Begins at birth. We have parents telling us stories and encouraging us, and then we later on learn our power through personal stories that creates our personal agency and our power to tell their stories. And those stories connect with another person's stories, just like Bill's. And these stories create a ripple effect that impacts other people. So our stories really impact other people, just like the ripples in a body of water. Now I'm going to share with you a little bit about my story. As I said, I'm Agnes and I am Navajo, Diné. I speak my language and I grew up in the culture. And growing up, um, reflecting upon it, we did not have a word for disability. In other Indigenous communities, we'll say something very similar, that there is really no word for disability. And growing up in my family, we had several people with physical and cognitive disabilities, but they were all respected for their gifts and abilities. And as I started growing up and developed some health challenges, and was later diagnosed with a primary brain tumor, which led to some physical and cognitive challenges. And I was diagnosed over 20 years ago and went through treatment and have been managing the brain tumor ever since. But I used a lot of alternative therapies to help with the headaches, through Tai Chi and also through movement, and changed my diet because of the hormonal changes. And also start developing anxiety and difficult in thinking. And so meditation really helped me out in this process. And through that experience of going through that, I was continuing to work and go to school. So I really did not think I had a disability. And it was not until I started working for the Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities. And one of the activities I was assigned was to deliver out webinars for our community. And so I decided to do the first webinar about my experiences of traumatic brain injuries and primary brain tumor, and how I considered it a disability with a hyphen under with DIS and then abilities, because I really wasn't sure how it really impacted me. And so in developing that PowerPoint and sharing my story, I realized that after the webinar, several people started connecting with me through email and through phone about very similar experiences and how they had concerns about their differing abilities and whether it was a disability, and what I did to help with headaches or with anxiety, depression, um, difficulty in concentration, and many times difficulty in speaking, because where I had the brain tumor was a pituitary gland, and so that really impacted a lot of functions. And so it was at that moment that I realized I did have a disability, and my story is powerful, that it would impact other people. And so that's just my perspective of my experiences and how an individual's story can impact others. And it's those little small ripple effects that really create change. Next slide, please. And so that's how stories can be used in a variety of different ways, as we've heard and saw from Stacy's examples of the 988 call centers, about the medical support groups with focus groups, which are pretty much stories and narratives that are documented. And then other resources, and of course, the examples that Barb shared with Bill's story. So stories can be used for personal support and advocacy, advocating for change. It can also be used for planning purposes. And really, it's really important to acknowledge that when we work with planning purposes, that lived experiences need to be at the table, not just for sharing their story, but guiding and the process and helping to lead the process. So being a vital member of a community, not just to be there because a person has a disability, but be actually part of the planning process. It's also good for building trust and finding that common ground. So this is where, in Bill's story, how being out there and sharing, that they're able to build that trust and be able to connect with others. So again, stories can be used to identify the community strengths and some of the challenges and needs. An example in terms of planning is in our Sonoran Center. We have peer advisors with lived experiences who share their experiences with medical students about how to care for people with disabilities. So that is just another example. Next slide, please. So in these next couple of slides, Barb will tell a little bit more about how storytelling can improve how people receive services and supports.
Thank you, Agnes. So, how can storytelling make a difference in how services are actually implemented? You all know it as clinicians, and we hope some others have joined us too, that there are multiple touch points for people to navigate the system. You don't often hear really positive things, you often hear negative things, but those touch points can be made positive to foster success. Everything from intake, well, finding out that there are services and supports that could be available, having intake, finding out what kind of paperwork is needed, developing a plan, implementing a plan, discussing the plan, and so forth. These are necessary for the system to move forward and to keep getting the money to be able to provide the services. But when a person has the needs of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as co-occurring behavior support needs, it is that much more complicated. So what can be done around those touch points? We would suggest that focus groups in which people with lived experience share stories about the different touch points. Those stories are real, they bring it to life. There's often an aha saying, oh, we made that form to make it easier, but it wasn't easier to get through. And having people as equals in the room around people with lived experience and family members is really what makes it sing. That's how a story can come to life. And next slide, please. So, one back. So I apologize. So, what's changed from sharing stories in places that we know? Intake. Intake is not fun. Intake is for more than one system is a little confusing because people might need different paperwork. There may be a different assessments. There may be different ways. And how do you connect those two together? And it seems to fall often on the person with lived experience and or their families. So intake, is there someone, a peer, someone who's been through it, a friend, any kind of person that spent time navigating the system to walk with the person? What is this intake process? Why are they asking for all this stuff? Is there a way to get the documentation for the different system that doesn't repeat everything? And checking back regularly along the intake process road. Service planning, we know that person-centered service planning, although we've talked about it for 30 years, is an ongoing process for improvement. In service planning, and I don't think this is the case anymore, but historically, for those who primarily work in behavioral health, there are meetings that could be held without the person there, the person with lived experience, and we're glad to see that going away. And also, there's been moments where much of the plan's already developed because there's been that discussion before the person arrives in the room to tell their story. An effective means that we found to improve service planning is assist someone to share their story, talk about history, their preferences, what makes them tick, what is not a good idea, and not have people plan for you, plan with you, and you are the director of your own planning meeting. Doing this makes it more a sense of people planning together. It builds trust, it builds partnership, and in the words of Michael Small, what we need is trust and partnership. Oh, and respect is the third one. So one of the things that people have done, not everyone's doing it, is sending a video, photo, or even a storyboard before the planning meeting so that a team that may not be familiar with the person can get a sense of who the person is in their own way, in their own words, in the story they choose to tell. And next slide, please. A quick story about Lexi and what happens during transition or what might not happen during transition. She has a developmental disability and also is quite anxious and shy. Our summer job program at the Sonoran Center is focused on jobs in the community integrated employment. However, for Lexi, she needed and wanted to build confidence. She told that through a story of some things that maybe happened along the way when she was younger, fears, and maybe how to barrier bust some of those fears. She found that working there helped her build confidence. She got to know people, there are regulars that come in, she got to know the staff, and she became included. As other people talked about their stories and what happened in their day, Alexa began to do the same. And she talks about that experience in socializing and interacting with others was a game changer. Her story that she tells now is that she wants to help people with lived experience and she wants to go to school at the University of Arizona. So that's a personal story that can build things bigger within a system for the schools, for potential providers, for her family, and clinicians as well. So thank you. And next slide, please. So what are some other ways that storytelling can assist people with lived experience to receive their services and supports? Implementing services. Okay, you've got charts and graphs sometimes. You have your case notes sometimes, and maybe a systems need to keep the money flowing and to keep track of the things that are working or not. But when a person with lived experience shares stories of what went well in their day, their week, program, and the people that they work with, the people that provide them supports, they can share when it's time to make a change. It has to be in a way that works for them. Again, included from the get-go, no meetings without them, and being part of solutions. We call this reaching new heights, not my expression. It's about a person with lived experience shared it with me when he expressed that he did not want to do the same thing for the rest of his life. He learned to tell stories about new opportunities, what could be exciting, what could be a new job, where he might live, how he wanted to be treated and spoken to. Yeah, and data was helpful. People could look at things, but looking at something and someone through their eyes not only can increase the person's self-confidence and desire to learn more, it can change somebody's plan, getting them closer to their good lives in the community as they envision. We've seen some ways that this has been workable, although it can be done in any team, but it's been amplified by having focus groups, funding family-to-family resource centers, and peer-to-peer information networks. Some states have had a little bit of general fund, not all Medicaid, to provide grant dollars for self-advocacy programs that are developed and provided by people with lived experience. We won't talk about it a lot. And as clinicians, I'm sure that you have thought about the differences and similarities between peer-to-peer in the world of mental health and self-advocacy that is present for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They fit hand in glove, but there are some subtle differences about people's commitment to be with each other over time and the kinds of things that are shared along the way. Both are powerful, and together it can really make a difference. And next slide, please. I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague, Agnes, who's going to talk about some other stories and positive change and a few bumps along the way. Thank you.
So when we talk about resilience, resilience is adapting to challenges. And so there are a lot of community challenges, needs, but there can also be positive change. So next slide. So an example from our Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities is one of our focus areas is working with Indigenous populations in Arizona. And every year we host an annual Indigenous Youth Disability Summit. This year was our 5th annual. It was held on April 12th, 2025, right after our American Indian Disability Summit. So as part of the planning for this annual summit, we worked with youth from Disability Incorporated. They have a Arizona Youth Leadership Forum. It's a year-long program where youth are trained to become leaders, peer support specialists. So they tell their stories and share their stories and advocate for change. And so these Indigenous youth were part of our planning committee. And as a result, the summit itself, we had 2 panels that they developed. One was Transition Journey to Independence, and it was stories that they shared about their personal journey through transition, whether it's employment or personal. And then the other one was Intergenerational Impact Stories, where they shared about a person in their community, whether it's a family member, elder, who really provided guidance and became a role model for them. So these 2 sessions were really powerful sessions that provided stories from youth for other youth and for service providers and clinicians and whoever was on. So we think of these stories as a unique drops of water. And you see here on the screen, you see 5 different photos of the youth who were part of our planning program. So each of those are different drops, a unique drop of water, and each created a unique ripple, and they all joined and essentially made waves through this particular panel. Next slide, please. And so why stories matter is that stories are universal. Stories help us understand our place in the world, help us to learn how to act wisely. Stories help shape our perspective of the world. Stories help us understand other people and their perspectives. And stories pass down knowledge and morals. As we see through all the examples that we've shared, that stories are really important and have a place in clinical care. Next slide, please. And as we said, stories do create communities. So we work alongside people with disabilities. Here at the Sonoran Center, we have peer advisors that help us with trainings of our medical students and who lead our community advisory board. We as an organization, we as a team share stories that create our own community. So most of my colleagues here have lived experience or have families who have experiences with disabilities. And so we all come together and share stories to provide a vision and purpose for our organization. And it influences our ways that we advocate and create partnerships. And we all come together to create ripples and create these unique patterns, just like the image you see on the screen here with all the different droplets and the ripples here. So how do we use these stories? And so we honor stories during our intake, programming, and research. In intake, as an experience, I was a former patient navigator with people who had cancer. And so my whole job was listening to stories and translating that to clinicians. In our programming, we offer stories as a way to spotlight experiences. And in research, of course, focus groups to get input. We also can coach to support people to tell their stories because it's very challenging to tell our stories. And hosting a platform to share stories to foster a sense of belonging. So an example would be the Administration for Community Living has a stories of disability employment journeys, and there's a link to it. So where that will be shared so you can see what's available there. Next slide, please. So we have here finding Jerry's community. So in an example, Jerry was of a story of a person. So Jerry was hit by a drunk driver at age 18, resulting in a traumatic brain injury. So they were at rehab, but then stayed with their parents for months. And of course, many times people do become lonely, bored, and depressed. Counseling was okay, but didn't provide any tools for action. And in counseling, you do have, many times you talk, and sometimes it does get tiring to be talking about the same thing over and over again. So Jerry came to the counselor's office one day and saw flyers for a peer-to-peer support group. He joined and liked listening to the peer stories and started sharing his own story. And it became clear to the group that Jerry was skilled at speaking. And he was chosen to go to Washington, D.C. to take part in a national traumatic brain injury conference as a speaker. And he described it as a turning the light on. And that was a way for him to help peers and how the peers can help him. So now he's become a peer person with lived experience. Next slide, please. And then we have another example of my colleague and friend, Alicia Manuel, who was nominated for CNN Hero, who developed a nonprofit organization called Three Precious Miracles. And in her story that was from a local newspaper, The headline was that Manuel's journey from a prospective parent to becoming an auntie to hundreds of foster children started with a tiny baby, a borrowed car seat, and a onesie. So again, in her advocacy for Native foster youth, she told her story about how she became a foster mom, and that began her journey of helping other children. And through her efforts, she's been able to create policy change and how Native foster children are seen in the systems, and how this is an example of how one line of a story can have a hook that can cause change, but also really link you into her story. Next slide, please. So how do we create these stories? So stories can also be in print. As you see here, we have examples from our Sonoran Center for Excellence, 3 workbooks. There are journals, paper communication devices. So basically workbooks that you can write your thoughts and fill out some action items in there. So how do we create stories? So we'd have to decide on what you want to create. Who is your audience? You also should listen to people, having them allow them to share their stories. And again, patience is very important because people may be uncomfortable of telling their stories. And in that case, you also provide examples of stories of other people sharing their stories. And you also learn how to create stories. So there's various platforms and software that you can utilize. And remember that stories are pretty much waves, audible waves, print waves. They can be written, they can be poems, they can be workbooks. So stories can take many, many forms. So next slide, please. So we are, again, another example from our Sonoran Center is a digital story on positive parenting. It's Francine's story, and there's a link to the story here. We're not going to show it, but it's a video you can view at as needed. So it's about pregnancy and parenting. And in our project, we collaborated with multiple parents with disabilities to gain information about the needs, preferences, and experiences of disabilities and their decision making regarding healthcare and support to become pregnant and parent a child. So next slide, please. So digital storytelling is pretty much combining voice, oral and written stories with images, sound, and video. So in my work here at the University of Arizona, I've worked with the College of Public Health, and one of the jobs that I first started out with was developing a video on breast health for the White Mountain Apache tribe. And as a health educator and teaching people about different forms of health challenges, but also advocacy, and we found out that digital storytelling was a powerful tool where people can tell their story. So we teach folks about the basic tenets of what a story is and help them write their story. And they go through the process of writing and practicing and telling and being comfortable with what they share. We would record their voice and then find images that would help complement that and put it together in software. So using Apple products, Mac computers have iMovie, and also on iPhones, you can also do videos as well. On IBM computers, there's other software that you can use for free to put these stories and videos together to make digital stories. So next slide, please. And again, it's having a person with lived experience. And the beauty about developing a digital story is also a way for that story to live forward. And that if a person is uncomfortable retelling and retelling their story that's documented in digital storytelling can be used again with permission from the person. And again, it's the story of the person who wants to share their story, that they are also the authors and directors of how that story gets made and who it is shared for. And we as people in our offices, whether it's through the universities or through other centers, we become the supporters to help produce and engineer and help them with their stories. So next slide, please. And so the next slide shares resources and how to create stories. So with our phones, with both Android and iPhones, they are powerful tools that you can use. And there are social media platforms that you can utilize to create stories. Facebook has a way to create stories. So does Instagram. And I know a lot of our community advocates and young people use these platforms along with TikTok to share stories with people. And for those who want to use print medium, we use Canva. Canva is a free online graphic design tool to create documents. They have a lot of templates and ready-made graphics, and it is user friendly. And so anyone can use Canva to develop flyers or stories, even little graphic novels. Another resource is StoryCorps. And there's a link to StoryCorps here, storycorps.org, and they help folks to record their personal stories. A while ago, they used to go travel across the country to collect stories from people on different topics. And they do have one that's focusing on visibility, and it's an online community dedicated to creating, sharing, and amplifying disability media and culture. And there's a link to that particular project there. And again, stories are powerful tools that we use. There are also in the chat, there's also several people who are sharing Real Abilities Film Festival. So the place where you can make, screen, and promote films by persons with disabilities. And so there's a link in the chat to that. And a couple other questions that we may get to as well in the group discussions. And so again, it's important to include people's lived experience within the process of planning meetings, and then also to be able to have folks share their stories, how you can use stories. And again, really thinking about as clinicians, what types of stories can be shared. That's not part of patient confidentiality is also one thing we have to consider that we did not address here. So, however, we want to thank you for allowing us to share with you our stories, how stories can be used, and we will transition into the next phase of our activity, which is the group exercise. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Max and Wendy for this group exercise.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Alrighty. So we are going to now get into a group exercise as said. And again, I'm, one of those people. First of all, I'm Max. I am a black man. I'm wearing a white collar dressed shirt with a white thin blue stripes, which are light blue, very light blue. I have a black tie on. I have black hair, and just sitting up against a kind of a link center white background. So I just wanted to get that out there for anybody who is just has trouble seeing. Um, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna like kind of hear from you a little bit because I'm one of those individuals when I present to people. I like to learn from the people that I present to, and this is like one way of doing that. And so we're gonna get into like a group exercise, and what you're gonna do is I'm gonna read a scenario, and then after that, I'm going to ask you a question, and your job as the audience is to come up with how to handle the situation that the scenario describes. Before I move on, do you want to just say a quick hi, Wendy?
Sure. Hi, I'm Wendy Morris. I'm with the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors. I'm an older white woman. I've got long gray hair and a ponytail. I'm wearing glasses and I have on a sleeveless turquoise shirt today. Thank you, Max.
Nice. Well, I forgot to mention I also work for Green Mountain Self Advocates. So, alrighty. So here we go. The group exercise. So I'm again going to read the scenario and I'm going to ask the questions, and the audience, feel free to put your answers in chat. If you want to come off mute and just say it aloud, you're 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 welcome to do that. On that note, here we go. So Raul is 32 years old and has been attending a clubhouse in his city that focuses on people with mental health support needs. There are activities like cooking classes, art classes, budgeting classes, and bingo. Raul very much likes to go to the clubhouse for something to do and to be around other people when his family is at work or doing their own thing. Raul also has autism and feels that the staff and members do not understand him and the other people who drop in who also have a cognitive disability. For example, he gets overstimulated easily, especially when there are a lot of people at the clubhouse and it becomes noisy. This is when Raul will have trouble talking to other people because he is distracted, or he will go off by himself and rock. He is usually a social guy and engaged in the activities, so others seem confused by this. So, how can you encourage Raul to share his story to spark change for others at the clubhouse to understand people with co-occurring conditions? And who else could Raul partner with to spark change? And we will keep our eye on the chat. But again, if you would like, you can also just put yourself off mute for a moment and say what it is you'd like to say to answer. People are thinking, it seems. All right, I got one from Terry Angel, and they said, encourage him to share and maybe come up with a sign when he feels overstimulated so that he can be understood. Good. Holly Burdick says, in a quiet moment before he is overstimulated, a group leader can speak with him about how telling his story is helpful to others and probably to him. Perhaps he can partner with a buddy in the group to speak for him or stand beside him when he shares. Make sure there is time that he can share safely. Good. I would say next, Elise Bardoza says Raul could try to express himself through art. Art classes are offered at the clubhouse. So this may also encourage the art class teacher to get involved in assisting him in finding the best way to share his story without having to be overwhelmed.
I love that, right? Tapping into a class that's already being offered. That's great.
Yeah, taking advantage of what is there and then
Right.
like, to your own good. I like that. Karen Topper says, I guess I'm wondering if wearing headphones would help. This is would also signal to others that he likes it when he can block out noise. You know, some people on the spectrum do wear headphones to muffle or block out a lot of noise that is stimulating. Jennifer Lambert says if sharing his story would be a bit overwhelming, maybe he could use some of his support staff at the clubhouse to help outline his ideas and present what parts about himself or his experience he feels comfortable about. I got another one from Dr. Eliza Bella, and they said maybe he could have a local peer support network for others who, excuse me, may have others who may have cognitive disabilities partner with this clubhouse to expand their understanding of ways to engage and honor all who may come to the place. That's good.
I can read a couple. One
Go ahead.
from Holly Burdick says he is probably not the only one getting overstimulated. Perhaps talk time for all to discuss to discuss a loud and busy environment affects each of us. That's a great idea. Get some other people sharing similar thoughts and feelings. And then Roswell Whiteley Thomas, sorry, I'm having trouble saying. Can there be a class or group that open discussion about the dialogue and experiences? Another good idea.
Yeah.
I was kind of having a similar thought, Max, that, where our presenter talked about some different ways to present digitally. And I thought, well, maybe he could find a way to tell a story digitally, but then get somebody at the club to invite other people to tell their stories digitally too, right? That it just becomes one of the stories where we're learning about each other.
Yeah. Having people with like that, like what he's facing also there too. Yeah. Bring along with him.
Yeah. And we all get overstimulated, right?
Oh,
Yeah. I certainly do.
It's one reason why I take walks. Thank God I live on a back road.
Yeah. I don't much enjoy crowds.
Eh.
Other ideas. We still got time to take some more comments. Again, you can come off mute, raise your hand, or just put it in the chat.
Linda Roderick says he could work with some. Okay, Linda Roderick, let's go to you first. He said we could work with someone to find a support group with others who have similar struggles so that he doesn't feel alone in his feelings. That's great.
Yeah.
Holly Burdick said, Holly, thank you for your questions. When do advisory boards the UA and at a local clinic that I am on the clinical advisory board, this person is usually 18 and allows for a support person. There is a confidentiality agreement that if a patient's information is discussed, that information is not to be shared. If a person's medical information is to be discussed, like in a case discussion, usually the patient is not present. We use reflective communication, I statements, and training in communication with people with disabilities. While in medical school, it is usually provided. We do an interprofessional exercise for our health professional students that include breakouts with people with lived experience, and I hope this helps.
That must be an answer to maybe to one of the panelists. I see that it was answered in the host and panelist only chat, so not visible to everybody. So
Whoops.
no, that's fine. I think that was not to this case study, perhaps an answer to a question that Holly had raised. So
What a great training, says Holly Burdick. Thank you. I asked a question earlier in the presentation. Sorry.
yeah, so that's what that was. Thank you, Holly, for explaining. That's what we were kind of guessing. Other thoughts to our exercise here about how you could encourage Rael to share his story and to help other people understand, or who else maybe he could partner with? Max, I missed this part of our presentation earlier today. Were there other ideas that came up there that we haven't heard today, this afternoon?
And I think we got to all of the things that were said in the previous. If you would like me to try and go back and find a few, I could.
No, that's okay. I just thought maybe if there was something that really stood out to you. So getting similar ideas, some really great ideas. Perfect.
I think so far what has stood out for me is like really, I liked the comment about taking advantage of the art class to share the expression, but also to bringing in people that have similar, if not almost the same experience, for Raul to, do something on in this regard.
Yeah, I do too.
I have a couple others. I think it says from Karen. Partner with others to create an experience space that shows what it feels like for them when overstimulated. And then
Great idea.
yeah. And then Karen Topper says, can there be a smaller group? I want to honor his desire to be with others, but respect his need for calmer surroundings. Yeah. Anybody else? Sometimes, Wendy, I kind of look at it like this, but there may be some ideas that could be said, and it's kind of like we're getting all the popcorn like popping out of the machine, but there could be those just few kernels left
Absolutely.
after you unplug the machine, and sometimes those leftover kernels that haven't popped yet after unplugging the machine could pop out of people. So just be aware of that.
Yes, I have a colleague who always takes a long dramatic pause to make sure that that anybody who wanted to speak has the space to do that. So
Anyone else? Hoping that we get every single last. Okay, here we go. I guess what I can say is this, like, I think when you're like in a group, I would probably like, if well, there's another one, but I think that if I were, in a group or managing groups, I would say like if someone in my group, I am in a self-advocacy group, if they get overwhelmed, like if there's so much going on, like they have like they have like a they're welcome to kind of step out of the group and maybe go to like a quiet space. And then if there's somebody there that could, talk to them, they could, they can do that. Um, we we do that in my local advocacy group. I also seen this at conferences where there's like a room that is automatically set up for people that get overstimulated at like conferences, where they could go whenever they need to, just to be in a quiet place. So that way they get away from all the noise and stuff. And if they're having a hard, time, they can, they can go there. Also, if it really gets, to a point where they can't, be there anymore, they're welcome to leave. Um, Drew Milne,
Strategies.
go ahead.
I said all good strategies. Yeah, we have one more. It says we could ask Bro to talk about what he likes and dislikes about the clubhouse just to start the conversation. I think that's a beautiful idea, right? Just have some open-ended questions to get him talking, and then perhaps the story just naturally flows.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, there is one. I thought there was one. I think it's just keeping in mind, just having a place to go if someone gets overwhelmed. I think it's just, you know, just something to keep in mind if you're running a group or you have a conference or something, or yeah, just so someone doesn't feel like they have to be like in a certain like place where the meeting is, they can go somewhere else away from people,
Absolutely.
even if it means taking a walk outside if they need to as well.
Yes.
They have that option too.
So lots of ideas, not just how to help him share his story, but we've also had lots of ideas on how to make sure he's got the space or the tools he needs to decrease the stimulation and to feel less overwhelmed so he can enjoy his time there. So. All right, Max, are you ready to call it?
I think so. I think that this was really good. I think people came up with really good ideas to help Raul out.
Yes, I agree. And I think we're turning it over to Maria for closure. Is that right?
Yes, you are.
Thanks. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Maria, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. We so appreciate all of you for participating with us and for the excellent discussion. Next slide. If you would just continue to put any final thoughts that you have, any other resources that you have in the chat. Let me introduce myself. I'm so sorry. I'm Maria Crowley with the National Association of State Head Injury Administrators. I'm one of the Link Center partners. I have silver curly hair. It's kind of blending into the background for those of you who might be trying to make that out. I'm wearing a black and cream color sort of polka dot shirt, and I have kind of an olive complexion, and I should have on my glasses. Thanks so much again for joining us and for sharing and providing some feedback on the story that the example that we had for you up on the screen just a few minutes ago. You gave some excellent suggestions on a variety of supports that might be given, and we appreciate that. Next slide. It certainly helps us with sparking ideas for systems change and for building partnerships. In front of you, you see a schedule for the past shared learning groups. It's been a very robust schedule. You can find recordings, transcripts, and material from past events on the Link Center website. You can also find and register for the upcoming shared learning groups here is on the website as well. And the next topic is going to be on the importance of relationships. That's going to be in October. So stay tuned for postings and communications about that. Next slide. You can visit the Link Center's website, speaking of which, at any time. The address and link are here on the screen, and we can drop that in the chat for you as well. There's a QR code there. You can also just email us at any time with questions or suggestions that you might have. Next slide. We would love for you to do a quick evaluation for us, and we hope you'll complete that. There's a QR code here as well for just a quick survey. You can scan that with your phone. Looks like we have put a link to that in the chat as well. It'll also pop up automatically for you when we close out today, and we'll send that to you via email. Your feedback really is important for us. We pay very close attention to what you share with us. It helps us make improvements and adjustments along the way for future content that we share. Next slide. We just want to say thank you again for participating with us, and a very special thank you to our presenters today and our colleagues, Agnes Ataki and Barbara Brent at the Sonoran Center, and for sharing the great work that they're doing there. Thank you so much. We also want to issue a special word of thanks for our Link Center Steering Committee for the amount of time and the valuable input that they put into the work that we do, for contributing to the content and the preparation for our meetings, and for really the incredible impact that they have on advocating in their communities and creating change there and really across systems. It's just amazing what they do, and we could not do without them. Thank you to the Administration for Community Living and to all the partners for contributing to the preparation and content for this meeting. That's all we have, and thanks, and have a great afternoon. We'll see you next time.